Gus is the second brawler coming in the new Brawl Stars update, and today we are going to test him against every other brawler in Brawl Stars. And for a special treat, the voice actor for Gus is going to perform his lines near the end of this video, so be sure to stick around because trust me, you're not going to want to miss that. Gus is a super rare long-range support brawler that has medium to low health at 4,800 hit points at max level. For his main attack called Looney Balloons, he throws a balloon that has a long range comparable to Brock, but with a similar shot width range as B. Now, getting hit by a balloon thrown at you probably wouldn't hurt too much, and so the low damage output at only 1380 damage at max level kind of makes sense. While Gus doesn't bring much damage, he does bring some very cool utility with a special new mechanic. The way this works is Gus has a third bar, and every time you land a shot, this bar fills up by 33%. After 3 shots landed, the bar turns red. This means that the next shot will unleash his special power, which is a little spirit that spawns at the point of impact when it hits another enemy. This spirit will stay on the ground until it is either picked up by you or an ally. When it's picked up, it will heal that brawler for 1,000 hit points, but it can do more depending on if you have a star power and which star power you have equipped. I'll tell you about that in just a second. First, let's talk about his super. His super adds yet another layer of support for either himself or a teammate, as once it's fully charged, which takes 5 full shots, he can aim it and hit a friendly brawler to give them a 3,600 hit point shield. Alternatively, he can also auto-aim that super and it casts it upon himself. It's a higher risk play to cast it on your teammates because if you miss, well, you just wasted a super that took a lot of work to get. Now, his super doesn't change with star powers or anything, but his star powers do change his spirits. His first star power is called Health Bonanza, and it doubles the amount of health gained from picking up a spirit, so you'll get 2,000 instead of 1,000. His second star power is called Spirit Animal, and this will cause the brawler that picks it up to get a 25% damage increase for 5 full seconds, in addition to the normal 1,000 hit points they get for picking up the spirit. Now, his gadgets also revolve around his spirits as well. The first one is called Kooky Popper, and it's honestly pretty awesome. Whenever you have spirits on the ground, which there can be multiple, I think up to 10, you can use that gadget and it will cause them all to explode, dealing 1,800 damage to the enemies nearby. Pretty awesome. The second gadget is called Soul Switcher, and when you use it, this gadget will cost you 30% of your health pool, but in return, you'll instantly gain a full spirit bar, which means your next shot will spawn a spirit, assuming you hit an enemy. So now that you know what he can do, let's see how he performs against every other brawler in Brawl Stars. The first group we're going to look at are the spawners. Now, in your base level interactions, Gus loses to every single one of them. He simply does not have the DPS to outdamage any of them, although a few, like Jesse, it gets really close. But Gus reminds me of Byron in certain ways. He's not going to fare too awfully well in these base tests, and while that is useful information, it's not the end of the story here. Gus has a very long range, and he can outrange every one of the spawners with the exception of Mr. P because of the added suitcase bounce range. Now, you also need to take into account that Gus is a support brawler. He is not a 1v1 solo showdown brawler.
Oh, no.
In fact, I think he is going to really struggle in solo showdown. Sorry, Nubs. But if you look at these matchups in a game scenario, you're going to have teammates around you who will help you out as well as you can help them out. He's a team-based brawler, and for that, he will do just fine. But within your lane, you're going to really want to use that range and keep your distance. So this is kind of a case of Jekyll and Hyde because in the base level interactions, he struggles. But in a real game scenario, I think he'll do all right as long as he is in the right team comp and the right situation. One situation, though, he will not do fine, however, is against the Assassins. Now, it should come as no surprise that with such low health and low DPS, he gets beat down by all of the Assassins. Even Crow, with his tiny hit pool, manages to beat him without jumping in. Brawlers like Daryl win, and his health bar is really no worse for the wear, and Bull, he pops him like a balloon. This reminds me again of Byron, but perhaps even worse. With Byron, you have the ability to self-heal with both your super and your gadget. Gus doesn't have that. Now, he can use a super, but that shield, even if no one is attacking him, decays very quickly, so 3,600 extra health is just theoretical really, as within a second of using it, it's already down to 3,200 or more, without anyone touching him at all. Bottom line is Gus's hard counter are the Assassins. He cannot defend himself well enough to even remotely stand a chance here. Speaking of defending yourself, that's exactly what the throwers do, but with a wall. Now you might think that this is Gus's chance to get some wins, but you might be disappointed to find out that those throwers, they don't even need that wall against Gus. Dynamite manages to beat him in the 1v1, and Barley, he follows suit. Sprout is super beefy for a thrower, and Grom can hit his shots really fast. The only thrower that Gus beats in his base level interaction is Tick. I mean, and that's not nothing. I mean, it's almost nothing, but it's not nothing. In a game scenario, I don't think the throwers and Gus are going to tangle too much though. Throwers are going to be back behind a wall, annoying brawlers that are trying to push up, and Gus is a brawler that almost never wants to push up the field. If Gus did push up against a thrower, he'd be at a big disadvantage because he doesn't have the speed boost, a wall breaker anyway to displace the thrower, but I don't think it's that big of a situation though, because you shouldn't have to deal with a thrower very often as Gus. If you did, you're probably not feeling your role as Gus very well. I do think that he has a place though, and I'll tell you where that is in just a minute. In a base level interaction, every single mid-range brawler beats Gus. Spike doesn't get cactused. Instead, he does the cactusing. I'm going to trademark both those words, by the way. Griff makes it rain coins and damage. Lola easily takes him out, and it only takes Surge 3 quick hits to pop Gus. Even Squeak manages to pick up a win here, and Sandy, he was like half asleep, and he still picked up the dub. And Lou proves that ice cream beats a balloon. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Both Ruffs and Max have zero issues with him, and Ems, Tara, and Stu make quick work of the scared boy in his pajamas. Bo has zero mercy, pounds him into the ground so hard he ends up underground, and then once he's there, Otis beats him as well. At this point, it just kind of feels unfair, but here we are. And once again, I don't think the interactions tell the whole story. I mean, okay, so they tell most of it, but not all of it. Take Carl, for example. Carl wins, but not by an astounding amount, and yet Carl is one of the strongest brawlers in the game. In most of these situations, Gus is going to outrange them all. This drives home the point that you really need to stay at max distance with Gus. If you find yourself within the range of almost any other brawler, you're going to be in for a long day, or a short one, because you're going to lose pretty quickly. Gus is going to do best on maps that are pretty wide open, where he can most effectively use that range, and it's going to be paramount to hit your shots because with his reload speed being so slow and with his damage being so low, if you miss shots, you're going to get pushed off of your spot pretty easily. But there are a few brawlers that I think that he's going to match up all right against, and those brawlers are the long range ones. Here we see Gus actually win some interactions. He beats B with his ability to fire off shots faster, and surprisingly, he and Piper take each other out at the same time. Now sure, he loses to pretty much all the rest of them, although Belle, that was a close one. Amber just has too much constant pressure for him, and Gale, I think he's going to be one of the strongest brawlers in the new meta, in my opinion. Bonnie is able to beat him in cannon form without issue, so you know she's going to obliterate him if she launches herself to him. Colette loses here, but that's more of a function of her percentage-based attack. But Jean, however, is able to win. Rico also manages just to barely eke out one as well. Now, this is a pretty fair matchup for Gus in a lot of ways throughout this category. This is going to really come down to who hits their shots better. Now, it is important to note that he does actually get outranged by B and Piper by a tiny bit, but for all intents and purposes, they are generally close enough to call it even. Gus's attack is a bit wider, so it's a little easier to hit the shots than say with Piper or Belle, so there is some trade-off in damage versus ease of use, but in an in-game situation, I think Gus will do decent here. As long as you can make your opponent miss a shot or two, and you can hit most of yours, you're going to do okay. Unless you're playing against 8-Bit. And I think that that's going to be a terrible matchup for Gus because 8-Bit's too tanky and his damage output is way too high and consistent for them to equally square off. That being said, you're really bringing Gus for the extra utility that he brings, not his damage output. I think against the long-range brawlers, there is one advantage that you will have, and that's your gadget Kooky Popper. The spirits are going to drop at the point that they make impact, so in the back lines, and they're going to remain there until either somebody picks them up or you use that gadget to damage them or finish off another long-range opponent. This is going to be more likely with the long-range brawlers because they're going to be staying around that distance most of the game. But, I mean, listen, if you want pure DPS, Gus isn't the brawler for you. But all things being equal, he does a fair job against the long-range brawlers. Not great, but fair. And speaking of fair, the next group is not that. Okay, listen, I think you've seen enough to know by now that Gus is going to get absolutely shredded by a tank if they get close. In fact, most tanks are going to be able to charge him and still take him out. If you find a tank on your toes as Gus, it's not going to really matter if you have your shield or not. You're going to get roughed up. Primo is going to punch you down. Both Daryl and Bull will finish you off in 2 shots. Frank may take a little bit longer, but let's be real, you're never going to get through his health. BB's going to smack you around like a little plaything, and Ash will have 0 issues taking out the trash with you in it. Shelly, on the other hand, will easily win the base interaction, but unless she has some cover, you could stand a chance with her out in the open. Unless she uses her clay pigeons gadget, then, well, yeah, that's not good. So I tell you what, let's just forget about the tanks because Gus is a team player and he's going to need help from his teammates to deal with any of these tanks. Now, Gus is a healer of sorts himself, so it's interesting to see how he will do not only in the base level interactions, but also compare what kind of support he will be in a game scenario. The easy one here is Pam. She's going to outdamage him, as well as she has vastly more health, so no surprise there. Also no surprise is Byron. Byron can't win any of these interactions. I mean, he loses to Tick. That's because his damage ramps up, and this is not an exception here either. He loses to Gus. Poco is a closer matchup, but Gus still loses. Now, despite a poor showing in these interactions, I think Gus will find a home pretty decently here. Not so much as like a pure healer, but in function. I think that Gus will be best suited as a mid-brawler or a gym carrier, much like Byron is. I mean, no, there's not like an on-demand healing like Poco or Byron, but he does have better range than Pam or Poco, and with that range, he adds utility to support his teammates while they can control the lanes. Now, that's not to say that he's going to be as good, because I don't think that he will be, at least in his current state. Personally, I think that Gus is going to need a couple buffs to get him on par with the other healers and mids, but I don't think it's going to take a lot. So what are my personal feelings on Gus? Well, first and foremost, I will say that I love his design, his mechanics, his character, and his playstyle. I really vibe with it, but I think that he's going to need some buffs to get him to the point where he's not a liability to his team. I think the only game mode that he's decent in right now is going to be Gym Grab as a mid. With teammates that fill their roles and can hold their lanes, I think that he's going to provide some very cool utility. And speaking of very cool, the voice actor for Sandy is the same voice actor for Gus. So let's see the one and only Patrick Pedraza show you some of Gus's voice lines.
Hey, what's up? This is Patrick Pedraza, voice actor for Sandy and Gus on Brawl Stars. Check out my Instagram or my YouTube channel. I got some new music dropping, a Sandy song and maybe a Gus song in about 3 weeks. So check it out later. This could get dangerous. Here we go again. Sometimes you gotta fight. Is that Spike? Time to take Spooky for a walk. Come on, Spooky. This place is scary. Don't be mean. What was that? Am I a ghost? Why me? I will haunt you. Ooh. You got bested by a child. My balloon. You got spooked. Maybe I'll get to meet Spike. Really hope Spike is watching this. Spooky is gonna get you.
Seriously, you guys go follow Patrick on the social. Links are below. And while you're down there, let me know what you think of Gus. Do you love him? Do you hate him? I'm curious to know. And with that, enjoy the update. Peace.